Okay. Good morning, guys. Can you all hear me?
Yes, can.
Sorry, the house situation just now. Okay, so we are going to discuss our tutorial 2 and 3. Everyone can hear me clearly, right? Let me share my screen. Okay, can see the screen? Okay, so let's discuss our tutorial 2 first. So tutorial 2 is for chapter 2 about the level of testing, where we have discussed about unit testing, module testing, then we were concentrating on integration testing, and we have discussed the two approaches, which is the incremental and the non-incremental. And then we also have discussed the two strategies, which is the top-down and bottom-up. Okay, then after that, we have discussed about the driver and stop. Okay, so let's see what are the questions here. So question one, discuss the consideration or preparation should be taken when performing integration test. So let's assume, since during the lecture I have mentioned that integration tests can be happening at different stages. Okay, so for example, like when we have individual units, we are combining them as a module, that is part of integration. Then when we have individual modules, we are combining them become a subsystem or system, it is also integration test. And when the system is actually need to be worked together with another system or another environment, another device, hardware, so that is also part of integration test. Okay, so here the integration test which we are discussing is from the modules to a system level. So it means before we will start with the higher order testing, which is at the system level, we are trying to do the integration here. Okay, so when we want to perform this integration test, what are the consideration or what are the preparation which we need to take care first? Then only we can start the integration test. What can be that? Any idea? Before we do the integration test, what are the consideration? Or if there is any items or anything which we need to prepare or which we need to make sure we have done it. Okay, test environment. um are we already at the testing site now when we said we are doing the integration uh and make it as a system now? Are you sure we are already passing it to the testing team and we need test environment? Normally when we said integration, sorry, when we said integration, right? Normally we are still dealing with the source code. We want to make sure that each of these module has been successfully combined in the base of the source code, and there is no issues happen for sending and receiving inputs, outputs. So in that case, right, are we already having a setup testing environment? What do you think? Is it because we are already having like a system now, so it's better to test with the testing environment, is it? But here we are doing integration test, and we are having a separate testing which is called higher order testing, which is on the integrated system. So the question is, when we want to perform the integration test, okay, let's assume we are still in the development. Some part has been completed, some part has not been completed. So in that case, we don't have the 100% completed system yet. So to have a testing environment might not be the most crucial consideration or preparation for integration test. But let's assume if we are integrating the complete system with another system, or with another server, with another environment, then we have to make sure that the test environment need to be set up accordingly. But here, since we are still at integrating the code, the modules, so before it become a complete system, it is still at the lower level. So test environment is not really needed for integration test at this stage. That's why in the beginning I tell you what are the stages when we can do integration, and our discussion is actually before it become a complete system. It means we are combining module become a system. So we do the integration testing. We are not doing the system testing, performance testing, nothing yet. So in that case, test environment might not be really needed. Shangji, do you understand what I'm saying? So in that case, let's assume if our development is not 100% complete, so it's no point of having a test environment yet. Because remember, when we discuss about the integration, sometimes we might need the dummy code. This is because we can still proceed with the integration test even though the development is not 100% complete. So in that situation, there is no point of wasting resources on test environment setup, because it's not going to do anything. Okay, got it? So test environment at this integration test, we might not need it. But let's assume if we talk of integrating the system after that, then we might need. Okay. Any other consideration or preparation? I think I just mentioned one. Yes. Thank you. Okay, driver and stop. So let's assume we can have a two different situation here. If our development of the code is 100% completed, then we don't need to bother about this driver and stop. But if we are doing the integration, like we start as soon as possible, while doing the development, in some missing part of the program, we might need to consider about the driver and stop. So it means the preparation of driver and stop might be part of the consideration here. So it means we need to know how is the percentage of the development of the system. If it's complete, then we don't need the driver and stop. If it's not complete, then we need to prepare driver and stop. Okay. So for us to decide this driver and stop, or driver or stop, can I say it as part of the consideration? I need to know which approach we need to use. Can it be part of the consideration? What approach we want to use to perform the integration? Can it be? Yes. So the second consideration here will be which approach we want to use. Either it's an incremental approach or non-incremental approach. So if it's incremental approach, what will be the next thing I need to consider if I choose incremental approach? What will be the next thing I need to consider? The strategy. Yes, based on our development, the completion of our development, what we already have, we need to decide which strategy we want to use. So let's assume if our development has been completed from the main module, then it means we can start from top to down. Okay, so when we are completing the main module, then we choose to test top to down. So we use the top to down strategy. Then if we are completing the terminal modules, it means all the input output functionalities what we are concentrating first. So it means we can do the testing from bottom up. So bottom up means we start with the input output. So in that situation now, I need to decide which one I want to use, and according to that, I need to know either I need driver or I need stop. And if we choose to use non-incremental approach, of course, we need to prepare both of it. Got it? Can understand how these three things related? So based on which approach, we need to consider about the strategy needed or not. Then we need to know either we need driver and stop, or we need driver or stop. Okay, clear about that part? So the first thing is about the approach, and then the strategy, then the driver and stop. Okay, what else? The consideration or preparation. Anything more? Since here we want to conduct modules become a system, do I need to consider if individual unit test has been conducted, individual module test has been conducted? Can it be part of the consideration? Yes, because we always want to make sure that as an individual, all this item has been tested, correct? So that whatever defect, it must be able to be detected earlier, so that when we do integration test, we will have less issue to deal. We cannot say the integration can go 100% perfectly, but if the individual unit or module test has been conducted, then our integration test will be much more easier. Maybe there is no functionality issues or module communication issues. Maybe the defect might be at the integration level. It means something wrong in the integration part, not the internal code of the functionality. So we need to know if this individual test has been done or not. Okay, so those can be the consideration or preparation which we need to uh, consider about when we want to perform integration test. Okay, clear, everyone? Okay. Was it four? Sorry, can you repeat back? I was talking, then I don't know how many. What was the first one? The completion part, correct? Okay. Yes, the completion of part, and then the approach, then the strategy, and then yeah, the strap and the driver, and then is if the individual test. So it should be total of five, because I separate the system complete as one for us to consider, and then stop and driver. You want to combine them together also can. because they are all related. Mm. Okay. So let's move to the next question. What are the advantages and disadvantages of incremental and non-incremental approach, and which approach is better? So this one is actually recalling back what we have discussed during the lecture session. I have go through the point one by one about these both approaches and where they have their advantages and where they have the disadvantages. Okay, so let's assume if there is question like asking you to do comparison, differentiation, so you can actually put it in a table format, which is much more clear for you to answer. Okay, so here you can put uh, the approach and then the advantages and the disadvantages, as long you understand how they are actually being compared and which one is the advantage, which one is the disadvantage. Okay, so I think we have discussed six different key points. Okay, six different key points where we compare them. Okay, what was the first one? What was the first key point, and which approach have the advantage and which one have the disadvantage? Okay, yes, the first one is the number of stop and driver. I think I have just mentioned just now how each of this approach will use this stop and driver. So incremental approach have the advantage or disadvantage? Yes, just now I have said, right? Because based on the strategy we want to use, either top down or bottom up, we can decide either we need driver or stop. That or is really playing important role here. We just need one. So when we just need one, it means the work which we do for generating this driver or the stop is actually less compared to non-incremental approach, because there is no strategy can be used in non-incremental approach. So in that case, what will happen depends on the module we want to test individually. We will need driver and we also need stop. So the work which we do to generate them is more. So here the advantage is for the incremental approach and the disadvantage is for the non-incremental approach. Okay, that is the first point. Second point, what was the second point to compare them? Okay, so the second aspect where we can compare them is the programming error, if it can be detected earlier or not. So which approach can detect the programming error earlier and why? Why incremental? Why incremental can detect the programming error earlier. Are you sure? Go with unit tests. So you think the module which we are going to use non-incremental approach did not go through unit tests? Test independently. Is it in incremental approach or non-incremental approach? Incremental. How incremental? Okay, let's use back the incremental model. How this incremental model work? You know, the methodology, we have one called incremental model, right? What happened with this incremental model? Something similar concept actually here. It has nothing to do about unit tests, independent tests, no. Something else, which can help the programming defects to identify it earlier. Unit test means the module's unit test has been tested earlier before we want to do integration. Remember just now under the question one, we say that we need to make sure the unit test has been conducted. So we are not doing it during the integration test, but it should be done earlier. So now the same module which has gone through the unit test, we can use the incremental or the non-incremental approach. So now when we say detecting the programming error earlier, it is because these modules, they will be integrated earlier. They will be integrated in a small sizing based on the strategy we want to use, compared to non-incremental, where the whole module will be tested as an individual independent module, and it will only combine together as a whole system. So compared to incremental approach, non-incremental approach, the module did not meet another module in a small sizing, in an early way, but only has a whole system. So we can only detect the programming defect inside the complex integrated system. But when it comes to incremental approach, one module will be integrated with another module and will be tested. So when we test this module A, module B being integrated, we can identify the programming defect earlier and we can fix it. Then these two modules will be combined with the third module and we will do the testing and we detect another programming errors defect earlier. Not to wait until we integrate everything as a whole system. Can understand why we are detecting the defect earlier here? Earlier here means we able to detect in a small sizing. It means one module with another module is still small size compared to 5 or 6 module has been integrated become a whole system, which is much more complex, which is not easy to even detect, to analyze the root cause. Do you understand? Do you understand what it's mean by detect the programming error or the defect earlier means? When we said we want to test as early as possible, it means we start from the small sizing in an early stage. It means I start the testing from the unit level at a small stage. Then I move to the bigger until it's a complete system, for example. So the same thing goes here. When it comes to incremental approach, we do the testing in a small sizing. It means I integrate one module with another module, only two module. Then this two module with another module, three module. Then this three add another one more, four module. So in every incremental, we can identify the programming defect. But when it comes to non-incremental approach, there is no small integration happen because every module will be tested individually and all these six modules will be combined together as a whole system. So when we identify the programming defect, that is at a complex level, which is from the whole system. Got it? Why the incremental approach having having a advantage here? Can understand the concept of incremental, how the incremental work? Can? So when we able to identify the programming defect earlier, automatically it will give another advantage, which is the debugging process. When we able to identify the defect in a small level of integration, our debugging process will be easier. So this will be our third point. The debugging process will be easier in incremental approach, while the debugging process in non-incremental approach will be difficult because it's a whole system now. It's a complex combination now. Get it? So the third point, the advantage goes to incremental approach and the disadvantage go to non-incremental approach. Clear about this programming defect and the debugging process? Why it is going to the incremental approach? Can please do not get confused. Okay? Clear? Everyone okay? Until the third point. What is the fourth one? What is the fourth point which we can use to compare these two approaches? What is the fourth one? We have discussed the number of driver and stop, the programming defect, and then the debugging process. So the fourth one is the machine time to execute. Okay, if you see machine time, also we have two different what is that purpose when we will use the machine time. So the first one is machine time for execute the test case. Execute the test. Then the second one, the machine time used to generate the driver and stop. Okay. So this is something related to one point, which is the machine time, the usage of the machine